Welcome, everybody, to the Wake Up Call channel. If you haven't heard, the U.S. Supreme Court is allowing the government to remove misinformation on social media. That might sound like something that's not new, but this is something that is new. And we've all kind of gotten used to what the government is doing to us on the internet, and I've done everything in my power to not get used to it. So every time that I get removed, I'm not desensitized to it. I don't wake up and go, shucks. I get angrier and angrier every single time, but I continue to fight back. But this right here is really the beginning of the icing on the cake, because it's so loosely termed, where they're kind of trying to talk about misinformation and then how misinformation and disinformation were really just, it cost people their lives. But really what we've seen when it comes to misinformation and disinformation is they're even removing channels who are just talking about basic music videos and movies and things that they're showing you inside of these music videos and movies, which are very obvious to see, right? Eyeballs and pyramids and all this stuff that really gets people awake when they're completely asleep, because they start seeing the repetition and they start going, okay, something is going on here. That's really what they care about. That's really what they're trying to censor. So it's pretty amazing. I'll play for you some of these news clips that these people even have the nerve to come on national television and talk about how the government should be able to request the removal of this stuff from sites like YouTube and Facebook, etc. When we all know that YouTube, Facebook, all of it is run by the government. It's how they monitor the hive mind online, okay? If you think for 1 second that Mark Zuckerberg isn't a government operative, or if you think that these, CEOs of Google and YouTube are not government operatives, think again. This is just to give them more and more and more control out in the open, where people just go, yeah, this is the new normal. We should all just accept this. Instead of the government working for us, we have to let the government decide what's real information and what's not. And clearly at this point, anybody with a single brain cell should be noticing that when the government puts these little Wikipedia boxes underneath the videos, to believe the exact opposite. Because we've even seen underneath videos, reptilians. They're putting wiki boxes about reptilians. We know they put wiki boxes about world events that they've created, like that 11th day of September that they won't let you give a different narrative about, because again, if you figure out who was dancing on rooftops and who was really behind it, well, this new world order blows up pretty quickly. And of course, we've seen some of the other boxes that they've had to put out there about the Illuminati or Freemasonry, because they don't want you to wake up to any truth. This right here, they're going to use as a way to say, well, we're putting it out there because people were talking about horse tranquilizers and all the crap that they were trying to spew during the outbreak, never mentioning, of course, or addressing the nanotechnology, and certainly never addressing the fact that the flu went down to 0% when everybody was getting diagnosed with this. And the whole notion of it not even being real in the first place, that everything went live once people started poisoning themselves. Those are the things that they really should be talking about. And those towers, of course. But instead, they've convinced people out there that anybody who's talking about it and who isn't telling you to go to big pharma and is telling you all these alternative medicines is dangerous. When the simple fact is this is nothing more than a psychosis. Watch the talking heads on CNN. Watch some of these other talking heads who are talking about how this is just the beginning. This is the beginning, because now there's a fine line between the First Amendment, okay, and misinformation. We're starting to word this properly in their minds, right? We're starting to give a clear idea to the sheeple out there that, well, there is this thing called free speech, but it doesn't apply to anybody who questions the government. It doesn't apply to anybody that's called celebrity Satanists or shows these people constantly holding their fingers up over their eyes, or even the most basic stuff. This is to protect Big Brother. And of course, this is to protect the cabal that you can't talk about. Look at these lowlifes on national television. Brag about the fact that they're removing the ability of civilians to question the government. It's insanity.
We should note to our viewers, we did get one decision from the Supreme Court, very important one, and Ellie, you can comment on that one as well. The Supreme Court said the White House and federal agencies, such as the FBI, may continue to urge social media platforms to take down content the government views as misinformation. This is viewed as a victory for the Biden administration, technical, if not an important one.
Yeah, so
what do you think?
Let me talk about this case that just came down, the first one today. So You may remember about a year or so ago, a group of Republican state attorneys general and a group of internet users, social media users, sued the Biden administration. They said, you are violating the First Amendment when you were, during COVID, primarily during COVID, but other issues too, when you were reaching out to social media companies saying, you need to take this post down, you need to moderate this post. And the question was, does that violate the First Amendment? The Supreme Court has now found, by a 6-3 ruling, not your usual consent, it's actually a cross-ideological majority.
Interesting.
That the people who sued do not have standing, meaning state AGs and people who may use Twitter or Facebook, you don't have enough of an injury from this to even bring the lawsuit. So they didn't even reach the First Amendment question, the First Amendment merits. The Supreme Court just said 6-3, you're out of luck, this lawsuit's no good, go back to the drawing board.
Is that kind of taking a pass on deciding some of the more key constitutional issues there?
It's a procedural off-ramp, but it matters. I mean, standing matters in our courts. You can't just bring a lawsuit because something bothers you or offends you. You have to be able to show some tangible injury. And just to remind our viewers, we saw the mifepristone, the abortion medication decision last week, I think it was also based on a lack of standing. So Supreme Court likes to take these off-ramps if they're there, especially when they get into messy issues. But for now, there's no First Amendment violation in what the Biden administration did.
And Jamie, I mean, this is also interesting as it pertains to the upcoming, well, the election campaign that we're in the middle of right now. The decision means that the Department of Homeland Security may continue to flag posts to social media companies such as Facebook and X that it believes may be the work of foreign disinformation agents seeking to disrupt this year's presidential race.
So two things. One, I think a lot of parents are not so unhappy with this ruling.
It was brought by some social media users and states to try and prevent the Biden administration from reaching out to social media platforms to urge them to remove misinformation, information that they deemed could be dangerous, medical misinformation, say with having to do with COVID and vaccines, or election misinformation or misinformation developed from deep fakes, Russian, Chinese, et cetera, like that. The lower courts had sided with those challenging it, asking that the states prohibit, asking the court prohibit the government, the federal government, from reaching out to these social media platforms. It was a 6-3 decision. Supreme Court sided with the Biden administration, saying it can reach out to try and urge social media platforms to remove misinformation. So this is a critical decision. There's one more important First Amendment decision still pending. This bodes well for the administration on that one as well. But important for the intersection of misinformation, First Amendment rights, and the internet.
So the U.S. Supreme Court's allowing the government to request the removal of misinformation on social media. I don't hear, where are the MAGA people going after this stuff? I mean, the people out there I guess they don't remember, but Donald Trump was also calling for this type of stuff. He was also calling for massive internet censorship, okay? They're all working together, and the more we allow them to take our rights away, the more this tyranny is just going to spread. And anybody out there that thinks it's not a left and a right working together thing, think again, okay? Donald Trump and these people do not have your best interest in mind. These people are working together, and they're stripping us of our rights every single day. So the U.S. Supreme Court has struck down a lower court ruling in the case of Murphy versus Missouri in a decision that did not find the government's communications with social media platforms about the one-liner misinformation that had violated the First Amendment. The court's decision permits the government to call on tech companies to remove falsehoods. A key concern as misinformation spreads around this year's presidential election. And that's one of the funnier narratives that we've heard over the years, is this censorship over who you're going to vote for. Republicans saying this versus Democrats saying that. They couldn't care less as long as you stay stuck in the left-right paradigm. Who's getting censored for saying go vote for Trump? I don't see the Daily Wire getting removed, do you? I don't see Ben Shapiro getting removed. I don't see any of those people getting removed. This is for you and for me. This is for us because we're all in the same boat together, right? None of us have a voice per se. And if we ever develop a voice or become a large enough voice, they silence all of us. The big alt-right media does not get silenced for misinformation because the misinformation is really the left-right paradigm that they keep you trapped inside of. So, of course, conveniently, we have conservatives and Democrats approving this, being in, but all of them agreeing on it, right? All of them saying, oh, miss. And the reality of the matter is the majority of us who were sounding our alarm from day one probably helped save some people's lives. I know people listened to a channel that sounded a lot like mine for years. So when the whole thing occurred, they already knew it was coming because we all talked about it coming. And when it came, they were like, wow, it really actually happened. And they said, well, if I wasn't awake, I probably would have went and got it. Some 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19, 20-year-olds, who knows? All of us could have ended up saving those people's lives. I won't take a direct pat on the back for something like that. Neither should you, because that's really between those people and hopefully God speaking to their consciousness, telling them not to go and poison themselves. But just think about how many more people we could have helped. How many more lives could have been saved? How many people still to this day comment on videos like this who actually went and did it and weren't awake at the time, right? A lot of us had moments that woke us all up way before now, right? A lot of you woke up around the 11th day of September. That's a common one, right? I've mentioned in the past, with me, it was things like the McMartin preschool. With me, it was things like Jonestown. I'm a little bit older, okay? But now, the latest way a lot of people have been waking up is to watching the psychological operation the government just tried to perform and telling people out there that they should be silenced, that they should lose their job. The way that they were so pushy actually didn't work the way that they expected it to work. And more people went, this is ridiculous, okay? This is ridiculous. If everything they're saying is true, why are they so pushy about it? Shouldn't we all be okay if we go and get it? So the people who don't get it, if they get sick and die, it's on them. It's their choice that they're making. That woke people up. But unfortunately, it happened too late for a lot of people out there. I think we all know people who perished from going and getting it. And that's not a stretch. I know multiple family members. And I've said this before on the website. The hardest people to reach are usually the people closest to you. Okay? That's just the way that this goes. So in other words, if you're a kid out there, you're like, I've been trying to wake up my mom or my dad or my girlfriend, they're the hardest people to reach because they have an impression of you, right? They've known you your whole life. They say, how would you know? How do you know more than I know? I raised you, or we went to school together. They're the hardest people to reach. So I had a lot of people close to me who didn't believe me, who have heard me talk about this stuff for years and years and years. And then on their deathbeds, they were starting to regret what they did because they realized what they actually did. And I feel for anybody out there that was victimized by this government and what they're doing. And it's sickening to me. I don't blame the people because there's a psychosis going on. That's why I keep fighting. Okay? Because I feel for people, because this is psychosis. This is hypnosis. They're under mind control. That's what they're under. So they're making these decisions. And while we could all be annoyed at them because we see them and then we see them doing stuff like this, oh, we should silence these people that we don't agree with. It drives us all nuts. But these people are so sinister who are doing it to them. We still have to feel for a lot of these people out there, even though they're still going and doing this stuff. So the government puts this in place, right? The court rules 6-3 that the plaintiffs had no standing to bring the case against the Biden administration with conservative justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch dissenting, although many of the arguments in the case centered on how governments and platforms interact with free speech online. The ruling focused more on procedural issues and a lack of legal grounds to bring the case. Okay, and the simple fact is, we all should have a legal case against big tech. All of us should. Okay, the problem is that a lawyer would never take a case for anyone like us, right? I could sit there and say, well, I'm a ministry or whatever I say. They won't listen to what I have to say. They won't even take it to court if I ever tried to. Why? We all know why. Because these are people who I'm exposing, who are in the high courts. These are all Freemasons. These, Clarence Thomases and all these guys, right? Prince Hall Masons, etc. They're not going to take a case that exposes their brotherhood and what they're really trying to do. But legally, we all should have a case against them for doing this and doing what they've continued to do, taking away livelihoods. How many people out there lost their jobs? Lost their jobs because they refused. How many people lost their jobs on the internet? How many people lost their jobs in the military because the government was so forceful? And all this does is empower them more for the next round. And the problem that we're going to see here is that this will start moving, right? What happens is as time goes, everybody just starts censoring themselves more. That's what we're dealing with. If you haven't noticed, right? Everybody who's left the platform and gone to other platforms, they're censoring themselves by leaving this platform and giving in and going to other platforms. That's what the government's hurting you into doing, right? Then we have more and more people not saying how they feel, me included. I hold back a lot of the times in how I feel, and it makes me sick having to hold back. I shouldn't have to hold back. They don't hold back. In the propaganda they push about us and about our beliefs, we shouldn't have to hold back, but we do. And as time goes by, this is what I warn about, and people become desensitized to this stuff. They become used to it. And that's why I said earlier, I've not become used to it. I have not woken up and been like, oh, you know, whatever, par for the course. Let me move on to the next one. It bothers me every single time, and it makes me fight harder. But they don't want anyone to fight harder. And now that people become desensitized, I deal with people who go, just give it up, or, you know, do this. Why don't you try not to speak about that? You know, I try to mention to people, I'm like, how about you try rebranding yourself 85 times or something along those lines? With the amount of names. Yeah, it makes people real easy for people to find you again. They don't even know who you are or what your name is anymore. Right? This is the lengths that they go to prevent truth. That's how fearful they are of people like you and people like me. And we very easily should be able to sue these people. We should very easily be able to take their power away, because this is power that they were not given. The people didn't give them this power. First of all, they weren't even elected in the first place. And second of all, these are supposed to be our employees. So in other words, if you run a company and you got people working underneath you, are they supposed to come to you and tell you to go F yourself and tell you how to spend your day and what you should be doing here? And then saying, hey, and by the way, I'm going to take money out of your safe today and I'm going to go out to the bar with it or do whatever I want. Huh? Of course not. It makes zero sense. And what's happening right now makes zero sense. So what this leads towards isn't just people getting used to this. It's the next phase. When you heard that guy talk about, well, you know, more cases and more stuff to be tried, this is leading to the digital ID. And people out there don't seem to get it. Because when I talk about the digital ID, I can see, you know, when I talk on this, you know, in my day-to-day life with people, I can see their face when I explain it to them. They don't get it. They literally think it's like taking a screenshot of their license. So they're like, oh, what's the big deal? I'm already on PayPal. I uploaded my license to Amazon so I could get Prime or whatever these sites are that make you do that type of stuff now, right? Because they become desensitized. Time is their friend. The more time goes by, the more they do these little things, people get used to it, and then they go further with it, right? The digital ID is going to prevent us from speaking online. They're going to hold us criminally accountable. When they set these rules up now and they roll a digital ID out, it means once you get wiped off YouTube, once I get wiped off YouTube, once you get wiped off Facebook, everything you say will be able to be used and prosecute you. Free speech. So if you disagree with the government, you might be like, oh, well, what are they going to do? Freeze my Facebook? No. They're going to take you to court and try to put you in jail for a felony, for having an opinion, for questioning the government or questioning something the government's forcing on you. And this is what I warn about with liberals out there who think all this stuff is great. Eventually, they're turning on you too. They're turning on the LGBT eventually, all of it. And then you're going to go, how did we get here? We got here because dumb civilians are being empowered and dumb civilians are acting like children. And by acting like children, they're offended by words, and they're allowing the government to remove words from civilians who are warning other civilians about the dangers of a tyrannical rogue government. And that's what we're dealing with. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you, as always, and your families.